Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel called My Yellow Raincoat. If you are new to this channel, then you have not had the opportunity to see season 1 through 8. But as we continue to move along to all the life lessons that I taught in my class, please check those out because today we are on season 9 and I am especially excited to teach season 9 today. I was very fortunate because I taught English that I was able to use my literature, all those stories and poems and letters and just everything. I was able to use all of my material and turn it into lessons on embracing diversity. I had a huge poster in my class, which I have since donated to the library so that my students would understand people in the classroom. We may have some differences. We may be different races, different religions, different cultures, different beliefs. But we can learn to love each other and think to ourselves, these differences are what make us so unique, and we can learn from each other. And we can become like one happy family in here, and we can love each other. We're family. We embrace our differences. One of my students even made me a smaller sign that I ended up putting on the whiteboard. I saved it all these years because it's so special to me that she took the time to make this. So today's lesson is a little different. It might not be something that you ever talked about in your classroom, but I'm happy to share it. And so if you're a teacher, a coach, a parent, if you're a kid and you're listening to this, I hope that you will take this lesson to heart. It's very important what we say with our words. Our words have meaning. Our words have intention. And I wanted to change the vocabulary of my students, and that's a huge endeavor to try to change the vocabulary. So I would be in class, and I would be in the halls, and I would hear this language coming out of the kids. I knew I couldn't affect the whole school. But sometimes there's a snowball effect, and if I could change my students' vocabulary and help them to understand what they're saying, it might snowball and they carry it over to other places. I would hear it in the cafeteria. It's a really hard word for me to say because it just seems so painful, but I have to say it so you know what I was trying to change. I call it the R word, and it's when kids would call other kids retard. You're so retarded. You're such a retard. Here come the retards. And I thought, well, I have got to do something about this. I can't just let this go and pretend I don't hear. I hear this. So I tuned into some movies that I knew. I Am Sam was one of my favorite movies that I was able to use. Radio was another one of my favorite movies. We read the book Flowers for Algernon, which was part of our curriculum. So I was able to tie this all together. And I had the most interesting discussions. The kids didn't know where I was going with this. We saw a movie, we talked about the characters, and when they watched I Am Sam, they had so much compassion for him. He was a father who had a disability, and the state wanted to take his little girl away from him. They didn't think he was qualified to be the father. And in that movie, they end up realizing they don't have to take her away. He loves his daughter. She loves him. He brings a lot to the table. He may need some help, especially as she gets older, but he can be a major part of her life. And the kids really got the message. I really let them, steer the whole conversation. And they got it. And they felt so bad for him when they were going to take his little girl away from him. And the way the high school kids in the movie Radio, the way the kids treated him, it was so horrible. It was so painful to see, painful to hear. And right there on my campus, in my classroom, someone did something wrong or what they thought was silly, and I would hear that language Nobody said anything. Nobody corrected anybody. They hadn't made the connection yet. It was up to me to make the connection. So this is exactly what I said to them. I said, I'm walking around this campus. I'm standing at the door greeting you when you walk into my class. And I hear you're a retard. You're so retarded. I hear when these kids from the special education class walk into the cafeteria to have a relaxing lunch that they deserve, just like you do, and they hear, here come the retards. What are you saying? We don't mean anything by it. We just say it. We don't mean anything by it. But now let's think back to those movies that we watched. Did Sam get it? Did radio get it? Yeah, started to make them think. So I had to take this in steps and fix this in steps. And what were the steps going to be and what were the results? So we talked about how they now knew that the kids understood what was being said about them. And what did we say when we looked in the mirror and said, why do I have to say that to them? What's the matter with me? So we brainstormed some other words. Now I know it was a little silly, some of the words that I came up with. Like when you're arguing with your little brother at home and you want to say the R word, you could call him a turkey. The kids laughed. I didn't think they were going to say that. But they came up with words like jerk. And I went, okay, that's not attached to any particular person. Your parents might not approve of the word, but, talk about it at home. Let's think about it at home. Talk about it at home. See what you can say so that you don't have to use that vocabulary. I know that you can change that. How many of you in here have someone in your family who has a disability? How many of you in your circle of family friends have someone with a disability? Well, how do you think they'd feel if they were sitting in here and you're screaming out that word? Don't you think you'd hurt their feelings? So my next step was to have a poetry reading, writing and reading. And I invited the kids from the special education class on campus to write their poems and be prepared to read them in our class. And we wrote our poems and we were going to read them in class. We had punch and cookies and I lit candles. And when the kids read their poems, they went like this. Instead of clapping, they went like this. And we had a great time. But I have to tell you, that is one of the most emotional days of the entire year. Because my students saw kids that had courage, that had pride, that had confidence, that struggled. They saw creativity and beautiful expression of thought. Very heartfelt. My students, there were tears. We were crying. And everybody got to know everybody, and everybody got to know everybody's name. So how did it change? What were the results? Well, one of my young men was in social studies class, and he asked a question. The teacher told him he was a retard. I can't talk bad about any of the staff. I left it up to the child to deal with this, and I said, really? Well, how did you respond? He said, I told her that that's not the right thing to say, and she knows it, and she shouldn't say that. I said, well, what did she say? She just kind of shrugged it off. But he said, and I learned that in Miss Rand's class. So the teacher came up to me and she said she thought it was funny that he said that to her, that he learned it in my class. She thought it was funny. She didn't get it. She didn't understand this whole thing, what was going on. Another one of my students told me that at home, they started a piggy bank. That was that discussion at home that I said to have. They started a piggy bank, and anytime someone used that word, they had to put money in the piggy bank, and they donated it to the Special Olympics. Yep, made my heart go pitter-patter. What happened in class? Someone would be working, they'd be working, and someone would do something that someone else didn't like, or they thought it was stupid, and instead of just saying that's stupid, they would go, oh, you're such a I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it. I'm sorry. The other kids would go, ooh. Their ears were now tuned into this. And I told them, I said, you may not want to ever fix this. You may say it. You don't care what I think or what other kids think. You just want to say it, and that's it. But you know something? Your ears are tuned now. You will never say it or ever hear it where you won't think. And remember this lesson. And remember that it's wrong. You're hurting somebody's feelings. Okay, so let's take it even a little further. Years later, you know, there's always this continuation of my stories. It never ends right in my classroom. I was at the grocery store and I was bringing up my groceries. They were on the belt, and this young man that was very tall. Everybody seems taller than me. I don't know. Especially after 8th grade, they all like, whew. So he was very tall and he was putting in the groceries, and I was paying with my credit card, and so I was interacting with the clerk. And all of a sudden he looks down and he goes, hi, Miss Rand. Hi, how are you? Oh my gosh, what's going on? What have you been doing? And how old are you now? So he was 21. He was one of those kids that just hated school. Oh my gosh, he didn't want to do any work. But he was such a nice young man. He lived with his grandmother for various reasons. And I'd have to call her all the time. He'd send lunch tomorrow. He didn't do his homework. But he was such a nice young man. He never was rude or disrespectful. He just didn't like schoolwork. So he'd bring lunch, and we'd have lunch together, and we'd talk while he was doing his work. He said to me, well, I'm at ASU. You are? I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You did, oh, your grandmother must be so excited. He said she really is. He's really proud. And I just want to tell you a lesson that I remembered from your class. And he talked about this lesson. He said, I never forgot it. And I never used that R word again. So let's go a little further. Let's take it a little bit more years past. In season 1, I mentioned a young lady who had boyfriend problems. I talked about her in the season 1 of my yellow raincoat. I was at an ice cream store and I saw this young lady, and who could remember that sweet little face? Who could forget it? Is that what I said? Who could forget her sweet little face? And I looked at her and I said, wow, hi. And she got up and gave me a big hug. And I said, well, so a long time has passed. You came to visit me, I think, till I retired. You were like 22. How old are you now? She's 29. She's a teacher, and she teaches special education. Yep, that's it. Carried over. I'm going to read a little something here because I think this pretty much sums up this whole lesson. As teachers, we must believe in change. Must know it is possible, or we wouldn't be teaching, because education is a constant process of change. Every single time you teach something to someone, it is ingested. Something is done with it, and new human being emerges. That's by Leo Buscaglia. He's one of my favorite authors. If you haven't read anything by him, I really like him. So this is a really important lesson, and it's one of many lessons that I'm going to be presenting in my different seasons on embracing diversity. And if there's one thing, I can't say it enough. If you can change a heart, you can change a mind. Oh, did I reverse that? I guess it works both ways. If you can change a mind, you can change a heart. It works both ways. And I thoroughly believe that. So, this is the end of season 9. Stay tuned, season 10 will be coming out. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Bye.